pretty much everywhere else in the world, we've been affected here in Ireland by the coronavirus too. I'm definitely not going to get the boat on the water this year, and the coronavirus is one part of that, because pretty much everything is closed here and has been closed, and it doesn't look like it's going to likely to open anytime soon. We've had some loosening the restrictions in the last week or so, but to all intents and purposes, recreation and that kind of stuff is pretty much on hold for this year. As well as that, for the last while, since the initial sort of breaking of the coronavirus, my focus hasn't really been on the boat, I'll be honest about it. I've done quite a bit of stuff in the garden here, planting food and that, because we really don't know with supply chains and stuff what's going to happen. There's been a lot of difficulty about people that usually migrate around Europe and other parts of the world, planting and dealing with crops and stuff like that, and that hasn't been happening due to the restrictions that are in place all around the world. So just err on the side of caution, decided to try and plant some vegetables here. Not a lot, but enough to get by. So this is the vegetable garden. Those are all potatoes growing in those yellow bags, and the polytunnel has stuff planted in it, and there's strawberries and lettuces and carrots growing in this bed here, and onions growing along there, and herbs and lettuces, and more stuff planted over the other side in ridges over there. We got over here my garlic and stuff growing there. There's a herb garden, and onions and beans, and there's more potatoes planted in this ridge here. And the inside of the polytunnel, tomato plants and various other things, and bok choy, spinach, lettuces, etc. And I have been in the last couple of weeks here doing a bit of work on the boat, regardless of the fact that I probably not get in the water, just because I got motivated again to do it. There's a tractor going by. For a period of time here, there was absolutely no traffic on the road. It was like something out of one of these post-apocalyptic movies here. It was like dead silence, nobody was moving, people were pretty much staying at home. Now I have to be honest, myself, the lockdown really hasn't affected me that much. Partly because I'm pretty antisocial at the best of times, and as well as that, I'm considered an essential worker in my job. So it really hasn't impacted me. I've still been doing pretty much the same things. Of course, haven't been able to go to shops to buy stuff like for the boat and that, or other stuff for doing things around the house, but that's been the only real inconvenience that I've personally faced. Now a lot of other people have suffered a great deal of inconvenience and been forced to stay at home. Some of them have even lost their jobs. And as well as that, of course, we've had a death toll here in Ireland out of the coronavirus. We've had, I think, up until this week, I think about 2,000 people have died. And at one point, the part of Ireland where I live was one of the most infected areas of the country, which didn't actually make us feel too happy about it. We were pretty concerned here. Restrictions have been loosened, I'd say, in the last week or so, and it remains to be seen what impact that has on the coronavirus, whether we get a second wave or not. I'm really not going to get into the whole politics of the lockdown and all that kind of stuff, because that's not the thing I really get into in this channel. Get on and show you what I've been doing on the boat here. Bit of progress. I hope you'll enjoy looking at it, and let me know in the comments what you think. Well, I haven't been doing a lot of videoing of this part of the boat refit, because it's kind of tight to move around and do the work in it, never mind trying to film it as well. So I've just been cracking on trying to get it done. So I'll give you a look at part of the process here anyway. So I have this gym mat material which I use as the main part of the insulation, which is on the cabin sides and whatever. And then I've gone over it with this thermal wrap stuff as well. And then on top of that, I'm sheeting with the tongue and groove stuff. So I've done that side there. Of course, there's trim to go on this still. This is just the basic tongue and groove. And then I'm just about to do this side here as well. So That's it. Weather's pretty nice. It's I suppose we've had some nice days of 20 odd degrees. Today I think it's about 10 or 11 degrees, but it's still dry and it's still pleasant to be out here doing something, so that's what I'm out here doing today. Oh, that's looking pretty good. Oh, nice one, gets the trim on it. And the next bit is the cabin top. So this is from the V-berth looking back towards the stern of the boat. Obviously they have to be cut out to the proper dimensions, they're just roughed over. And then the bow end of the cabin looks like that. Right, well, before I can install the tongue groove on the interior of the cabin top, I need to fit these grab rails here, which I made previously. So I picked a position here of my own, halfway between the companionway hatch and the external edge of the cabin top, because that's where I felt it was more comfortable. I tried it to see, you know, walking up inside the side decks and pretend I was grabbing onto it to see where it'd be a comfortable position, and this is what I came up with. So I picked this hole back here, marked this one, drilled this one, and then I used the jig that I'd made when I put epoxied the stainless bolts into the bottom of this to fix it on. I made this jig, so I used that with a bolt here to locate the rear end of it. Then drilled the far end and put another bolt in through that one just to locate that one, and then drilled the two intermediate ones. So that's it, and did the same thing on the other side as well. So they're both pilot drilled out. I'm going to countersink these holes using the countersink bit from above to give me a recess to put the butyl tape into to get a better seal. So here's the butyl tape. Going to wrap that around the bolts and underside of the grab rails to get a nice seal on the cabin top, because the last thing we want is any water intrusion. Right, so I've put on lots of butyl, especially a bit around the bolt coming through itself. And drop that into the holes. And then tighten the nuts and washers on underneath with a bit of butyl wrapped around the bolt before the washer contacts it to put a seal on the other side. So belt and braces, far more than is needed, but it's easier to remove the excess than it is to try and stick another bit underneath when you don't have a good seal. So it's cheap enough, no point in messing about, stick lots on and don't have any problems. Right, that's them all tight up to a point, and there's a bit of squeeze out of butyl all around, which is good, which means we've got a good seal all around each of the contact points, and the same on this side, which is all good. So I can clean off the excess in a little while, get a chance to settle here, and clean off the excess, and then I can tighten them again a little bit more, just a little touch more, but they're solid on there, like, I mean, they're not moving, so just maybe give them another half turn after I clean off the excess. Okay, well, it's a good job I saved these cardboard templates that I made the port lights out of, and I'm just using them as the basis for making these internal covers for them, where I timber the inside of the boat after doing the insulation, etc. So we'll just fix them in place with a couple of screws, scribe the line around the inside, and then used a spacer, timber spacer, just to space out the line, and ran the pencil around the edge, being careful to keep along with the line and all that. So cut them out now with the jigsaw, and then I'll have to sort of prep them and paint them or whatever. So that's the ones made for the front and the rear port lights in the boat cabin. And like other things in the boat, I made them 2 at a time. So there's 2 of those, 2 pieces of plywood screwed together, and I cut out 2 identical ones at the same time, and the same with the bigger ones. So that's them roughed out now. Right, so I'm working on putting the EVA insulation that I'm using up into these recesses in the main cabin part. And these are the puzzle mats that I'm using. Just in case anyone's interested in the way I'm doing this, you see on this side here they have the interlocking section. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut a straight edge on that first, and then that'll allow me to butt that up to that side there, and then I can cut in this side here to get a nice tight fit. I'll leave this end here with the interlocking bits, and then I can join the next mat to that to do the best job of joining together like I've done here. So then interlocking together. So I'm just using a straight edge. I normally use my hand, but I'm on my foot so I can hold the camera as well. And then just cut those bits off. Give me a nice straight edge to work with. Right, so I've cut the side straight. I've cut the back at the angle by using a piece of timber, just holding it up on the edge here, and that gives me a straight edge line to mark to cut on that plane. And then now I hold it up in place, it's tight on that end, tight on that side, and then I'm going to mark here for cutting it, and then just slide it slightly forward, just a touch, and then I can see where it needs to be marked to cut it on this side here. Mark those 2 points, then use a straight line, use a piece of timber like that as a straight edge just to join the 2 cuts, and then cut it straight, and that'll give me the straight edge for this side. And you end up with that. And I just pressed it up here. There's one of the mast step bolts coming through. I just pressed it up to get an impression of it, and then just use the battery drill and a drill bit just to drill a hole where the impression is, to just push it up tightly in place so it's locked onto that. It's not going to move, it's actually holding it up there in that position, which is good. So then the next thing is to interlock the next one, and then carry on marking out the edges to interlock into that part there. And it ends up just like that. Okay, so I'm going to finish out the rest of this without filming every bit of it as I do it. That's that part insulated. Right, so this is the front part of the V-berth around the hatch. That's all insulated now. I suppose I can take that piece off. That was just a support piece to hold it while it stuck in place with the construction adhesive. That's the thermal wrap now, insulation over the other insulation done in the V-berth. And this is the main part of the cabin done with the thermal wrap. All back as far as this centre dividing piece where the mast step is. In this area up here I'm going to run the cable for the mast lights, etc. And I'm also going to put a couple of lights up here, but they're not going to be wired into the system of the boat. They're just going to be battery power ones that use rechargeable batteries. And I'm putting them out, one on this side here and one on that side there. They're actually lights that buy in the local discount store, which are magnetic, like a little globe that has batteries in it, and you can twist them around to point in any direction. So I'm going to try them and see how I get on with them. I think they'll work all right. And then I'm of course going to have the under edge lighting here, the LED lights that go underneath this area here around on both sides of the cabin, which are sort of under lighting, which I think will look nice. It won't be blinding you, but it'll give it plenty of light. So that's the plan, and that's how far I am at the moment. When it came to doing this piece here in the main cabin, I found that the angle between, you know, the outsides and the center of the boat was just too much. So what I did was I tacked on another piece of the same strips of timber that I used onto the existing ones over the insulation. So they're just, you know, coming down off the existing ones are underneath it, and they're coming down screwed to that. And I'm doing the same on this side around the companionway hatch, and I have to put one on here just to bring it down, because as you can see here, to bring these tongue and groove timbers up to fix there. Any further than that would just be putting too much strain on the timber and asking for problems. So I'm just fitting these in now, and then I'll be able to fix to them. So I just wanted to show you that when something, you know, happens that you're not really expecting, not what you intended, you can still manage to bridge it out and get it to work without, you know, doing any harm to what you've already done previously with the insulation or whatever. So just to show you have to adapt to what happens as you're doing these things. You can't just, you know, expect it all to work out. So that's it. So that's the main cabin done with the tongue and groove timber. And it just has to be trimmed, and then this bit here has to be done as well. That's the only outstanding bit, but I'm not even sure I'm going to do that with the tongue and groove. I might just do that with the strip of a wide cedar board across that, and then I'll have access in here for where I'm going to run the wiring up for the mast lights and whatever other lights as well. So I'll probably leave that I can just take that piece. That'll be just one piece of cedar that can be unscrewed. So pretty happy with that, the way it came along. It's pretty tight working in here doing this and having to go back out into the cockpit to cut everything, but kept at it and got through it, and that's all that really matters. Touch off of that. Where's the plane? There it is. piece for that. And go a little bit wider. Okay, not too bad. I need to take another couple of mil off of that. At least on this side. Good there. that's good. I think we're good. Just wondering how this will work. Because I have to put the companionway runners in, so I don't want too much stuff in my way. See that, do it. And if anything, I might want to trim up as much as I can to them. So maybe I'll just leave that. I'll use that edge to give me a position, and then I'll trim the underside, and then I can do that when I do the runners for the companionway. Trim up to it. Yeah, I'll do that. Okay, so right. I want this edge to come out past that, so I'll bring that out to there, like that, and that. Yeah, so I can just make this bit. Yeah, come to there. And so I want to mark that line on that. Give me a point to finish to. And that. And then on this side here, give me a point to finish to. Right, so do those two sides first. We'll go from there. Right, so this is the cabin top in the V-berth. And the hatch opening. And then in the main part of the cabin I've done trim around the edges. So I just have to trim out this part here. Next. Alright, so that's the trim done on the V-berth and around the forward hatch. Just like that. Okay, so that brings us to the end of another episode. If you've enjoyed watching it, please remember to give me a thumbs up. If you haven't already done so, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you next time.